Will trickle in here. Terrible. Really bad game. But we have someone new on here. Carl Corazzini, St. Mark's head coach for hockey. And we got, great hockey career from Framingham, Massachusetts, like myself. Uh, Terrific hockey career. A lot of time in the AHL. Captain of BU in 2001. So quite the decorated career. And it's good to have someone on here who knows some hockey. People are going to be like, wow, this guy knows his stuff compared to Evan.
Yeah,
Um,
Evan,
which
I
is what the
think you're
people.
Evan, I think you're overplaying the great hockey career. I think the best part of my bio is that I'm from Framingham, Massachusetts.
It
Right?
is. It's yes. It's that to me. That's the best part of your bio.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
anyways, you're coming in on a really tough game. Bruins lose 6-3. Really bad game. I tweeted out one of the worst performances of the year for the Bruins. I think probably was the worst. Just a brutal game all around. There were a lot of things in this game. I know we were talking before we went live. A lot of things in this game that we didn't like. What was the one thing? I think the big question everyone has right now is: are the Bruins in trouble? What do
Yeah.
you think?
I don't know if they're necessarily in trouble. I think the one thing that really stood out in the game is that the Florida Panthers made some adjustments and the Bruins didn't all game. Like if you looked at the Panthers forecheck in game one, they were heavy and they were on the puck. And in this game, they sat back, and especially that first goal, that turnover. You've got two Panthers at the blue line, waiting for the Bruins to come up the middle of the rink. Like Montgomery said, like all their zone exits, their zone entries are coming through the middle, and the Panthers just sat back and waited for the Bruins to turn the puck over, and the Bruins never made an adjustment during the whole game. And I think that was the one thing that stood out the most for such a good team to not make any adjustments over the course of the 60 minutes was kind of staggering.
Well, it was interesting because again, we've gotten used to this team all year. Even in game one, they weren't. The Panthers were the better team for the first two periods. Bruins still find a way to win. That's been the thing all year. And tonight, I mean, they go into the third tied 2-2, and it's like, oh, the Bruins haven't been playing great. They're gonna find a way in the third. And as you said, like every pass it felt like the Bruins made upon entering the offensive zone was intercepted or just broken up. And that's not even getting into the turnovers in their own zone, which caused a number of goals tonight and has been an issue. And I mean, just that, like the Panthers and have just been playing better, through two games. I think they have, been the better team. And again, that's so less than ideal for the Bruins going into Florida now because you head back to Florida. Now, I don't think the Bruins are in trouble. I'm with you on this. I don't think they're in trouble. I know that it's, DEFCON 4. Things are really bad. Things were really bad tonight, but I still think they're there. I don't think this is an issue. My prediction still holds up. I had Bruins in 5. So I still am. It's still, could be 5. But one thing that really stood out to me in this game, Carl, the physicality. Bruins did not look like the alphas out there. The Panthers just out tough them in a lot of ways, it felt like.
Yeah, but I think if you look at the team for the Bruins over the course of the year, their game's not predicated on toughness. And you knew that there was going to be some sort of pushback from the Bruins today, and they did that in the first period. They did that with speed, with pursuit of puck, with stick, with angles. They're not a team that comes out there and is overly physical. And I think that's the one thing that stands out at the end of the game. When you look at Foligno, when you look at Frederick, like the idea that they're going to try to set the tone for that third game in Florida. And if their idea is that they're going to go out there and try to be physical with the Panthers, then that's the caveat. Then I think they're in trouble. Because I don't think that they can play with Florida for 60 minutes, trying to put pucks behind them, trying to cause turnovers by being physical. I'm not a big believer in trying to set the tone at the end of the game. Like you had the opportunity to do that in the first 59 minutes. And again, if the Bruins want to put out their fourth line, their third, fourth line, and try to get in the trenches, I think they're in trouble. And so that's where I will disagree with you, Evan. That caveat, if they're going to try to change that style of game, and be physical with Florida for 60 minutes, I think they're going to have a difficult time.
Yeah, the one thing that worried me was just during the game there were some, plays, and obviously in the playoffs, you're not going to respond to every hit, but you try to you almost try to, if they're going to take out one of your star guys, or not take out, but big hit, you want to kind of make a big hit later when the time is right. And as you said, the last minute of the game to set the tone, not the best. You had the whole game to do it. And I keep going back to, like, you had that time. And there were so many times it felt like during the game where the Bruins getting roughed up, Good. And by the way, credit to Brad Marchand in the first period when Gudas was all over him. That's why I'm surprised by the outcome. If you went back to me in the first period and said, this game's going to end 6-3, I'd be like, what? Because, you see Gudas just wrapped up with Marchand. Marchand doesn't, do anything back. They don't call anything, which, okay, set the precedent. But then Marchand ends up drawing a penalty later in the period, and you think, oh, okay, the Panthers are just, doing whatever it takes. And that's not the case. But again, the Panthers have some guys, Gudas, Ekblad laid some huge hits. Do you think that's sustainable? You think the Panthers can out-tough as you said, the Bruins are not this team that wins on toughness, but do you think the Panthers could out-tough them so hard they win, like they really make a push for the series?
I think that Sam Bennett drawing back into the lineup tonight provides depth from line 1 to 4 down the middle. And I think now down the middle, they can compete with the Bruins. They may not have the wings that can skate and play, but that depth down the middle of the rink, and Sam Bennett that plays a 200-foot game, I think that might be sustainable. That might be sustainable for this 7-game series, and they might run themselves out if they get into a second round matchup with either Toronto or Tampa. But I do think the game plan against the Bruins is to force turnovers, to be heavy on the D, to force them to defend for 60 minutes. And that's what they've tried to do for the last 2 games. And let's be honest, Florida should be up 2-0.
Yeah.
And so is it sustainable? Yeah, I think it's sustainable, especially now where you get a top 6 player coming back into your lineup. I think it's sustainable for the next 5 games. Yes.
Yeah, you see some of those turnovers were awful by the Bruins in their own zone, and some of those missed coverages. There were some that didn't end up going in, but guys from the Panthers left wide open in front of the net all game. And I also think the Florida forecheck's been good. Like they have, and again, there was a game, and I've mentioned this a few times. Connor Ryan's mentioned this a few times on Bruins Beat and Poke the Bear. Like that game against the Kraken in mid-January, I always go back to because that was sort of the blueprint for how to beat the Bruins. Quick on them, make them make turnovers, stifle them in the neutral zone, don't give them easy entries. And the Kraken did it back then, and granted it was 1 game. But you look at this, and I find this to be a similar-ish game plan to that, of just forcing them to make these boneheaded turnovers. And you see it all game. Is there anything else that stood out to you about Florida?
Well, I think the forecheck has changed a little bit over the course of the 2 games. I think if you look at game 1, the Panthers were hard, like almost a 2-1-2 with their D-man pinching down, really trying to take away that time and space. And then today they almost go to the Bruins into going into the middle of the rink, like they backed off at times and forced the Bruins into those turnovers, right? Like kind of saying to them, like you're talking about stifling the neutral zone, like, hey, put it in behind us and let's see if you can forecheck us, right? And the Bruins obviously are predicated on getting entry into the middle of the rink and playing with possession, not really wanting to be right, like a dump and chase, but like they don't want to forecheck for 60 minutes. So I do think that forecheck has changed. I think a little bit in the 3rd period tonight. I think Florida was a little bit heavier, try to wear them down, right? But Florida in their game plan, they've changed it. They've made adjustments, and they've just been the better team.
Yeah, Jim Montgomery, quote out of the locker room, quote, "The turnovers we had tonight were catastrophic." I think that's putting it lightly from that. Another one,
And I think
Bergeron.
you,
What was
yeah.
that? Go for it.
No, I was just gonna say, you look at the turnovers, especially like Carlo McAvoy. They have time and space, right? Like they weren't crisp in their passing tonight, and that was a big problem for it. I don't like when you're not crisp. I don't know like or have an answer for that. Right? Like obviously at this time of year, you don't have a lot of practice time, but they just seemed off in completing passes tonight.
Yeah. No, I mean it was, and they weren't great in game one either. I know, we mentioned they weren't good in game one, and obviously they ended up winning that game. And we said, after the post game, in game one, hey, they played not great and they still won. That's been their MO for a lot of the year. But tonight they didn't play well and they just laid an egg, really bad.
And I don't know that, and that kind of falls in like in your thought process as a player, right? Like you look at game one, I think the Bruins know that they weren't at their best, but they found a way, right? And you're going into the third period, 2-2. The thought process in that locker room, we will find a way. And like I don't know if it was that level of complacency or the fact that Florida did change that forecheck, but also at the beginning of the second, the beginning of the third, having a goal scored in the first 2 minutes of each period, that's backbreaking, right? Like as a team, like that little letdown, it doesn't give you a ton of hope moving forward.
No, there's not a lot of hope here, from that perspective. Yeah, I mean, I go back to, as you said, and the commenters are hitting on this. The Bruins have not been the better team through 2 games, which is concerning, which is very concerning for a team that won 65 games. And again, I don't know. I still think they win this series. I know, again, they were going to lose a game in this first round. They were. I think the concerning thing is they're not playing great, and the Panthers have sort of found a way here, as you said. They get Sam Bennett back. And it's been, pretty rough. Before we get into the rest of what we have to talk about, I want to tell you about our good friends over at FanDuel. As you know, you guys are great for supporting us as always. And you can go to FanDuel.com/Boston. For our first $5 bet, get $200 in bonus bets, which is terrific. You can live bet these games. You think the Bruins are going to, the odds are low. You think the Bruins are going to win? Bet them. Panthers, bet them. There's lots of ways to bet on the NHL playoffs, and you can do all of that with our good friends over at FanDuel. I don't know how long this promo is going to last. Get the free $200 bonus bet, so go check that out now. FanDuel.com/Boston. Anyways, so Patrice Bergeron, that was the big story. Early Wednesday coming into game 2, Montgomery drops a bomb, says it's not an illness. It is, obviously an injury. Going into this game, I had said, look, this is a series the Bruins should win easily, handily. They found a way in game 1. They'll find a way in game 2. If they got to keep Bergeron out for as long as it takes in this series until you need him in round 2, you leave him out. It's become ever so clear in game 2 that you need Bergeron back badly. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you take a look at the third period. At one point there, you had lost 13 of 16 draws. And obviously, if Patrice is in the lineup, that's not happening. But I think you obviously the leadership portion of having Patrice around the locker room and having that stability when it might be 3-2 in the third period and just having played so many playoff games in high leverage situations, you need him around for that. I just think the concern is, right, like you were led to believe it was precautionary, that there was illness on top of injury. And then you just take a look at how he practiced today, away from the team, going through some conditioning drills. Like there's something going on there. What it is, I don't want to speculate, but that's an issue that he wasn't practicing, going through drills with the team today.
Yeah, I know Montgomery's saying that, he's getting better every day, but they also have downplayed this completely. So I don't really know if I can sit here and believe that. They need him back. They do. You need him back in this series. As you said, the draws. And I also think he provides a huge lift. Like he comes in on Friday. That's a huge boost. for game 3. And I will say this is going to be a very negative post-game show from a Bruins perspective, as it should. They played horrible. Brad Marchand had a pretty good game with Bergeron out and showed some leadership. Again, I mentioned, not getting into the stuff with Gudas, scores a shorthanded goal. Like, he actually played pretty well. And, I thought that was interesting.
So I would say through the first period, through his goal, he looked like vintage Brad Marchand, right? Like playing with energy, pursuing pucks, like obviously the goal. And then on the flip side of that, like the last half of the game, just the amount of turnovers to the middle of the rink that he had, right? Like, or power play, having pucks picked off. I felt like down the stretch, he felt like he needed to do too much, and he was trying to win the game himself, which is a really hard thing to do. And I think when you take a look at how important Patrice is, I think that slots everyone back where they're supposed to be. Like I think it's pretty clear that a difficult task for Pavel Zacha to play on that first line and have those type of matchups for him. Like, he's been obviously the 7th player award, a great complimentary player. He's a great player. But he's designed to be a second or third line center and or winger, right? Like, he's not ready to play with Marchand, DeBrusk, and carry that line. And I think that's kind of proved out the last 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, that line ended up actually having a pretty good night in terms of chances. Outchanced Panthers 16-3 at 5-on-5. But I mean, as you said, and the other thing is, like, another instance of someone trying to play too much, the Krejci line. Obviously Bertuzzi's been effective, but Bertuzzi, Krejci, Pastrnak outchanced 3-12 at 5-on-5. That's not good. That's not great. And to have that, again, obviously the first line is technically DeBrusk, Zacha, and Marchand, but the real first line with Bergeron out is Bertuzzi, Krejci, and Pastrnak. That's your line, you hope. And I know early in the year, Montgomery kind of mentioned, hey, we're okay with Krejci's line trading chances if it results in goals. But tonight's the downside of that night, which, again, I mean, they're out there for a goal against at 5-on-5, which obviously is not good. But, yeah, I mean, again, I think you're 100% right, though, on the Marchand thing, needing Bergeron there. And this whole team needs Bergeron in every situation. You seriously need it. I mean, is there any chance they can be all right in game 3 without him?
Yeah, you certainly can be all right. Like, obviously they've proven throughout the whole year with different injuries throughout their lineup that someone's found a way to step up. And I think if you look at it from a team, and especially the way that the Bruins play, they're going to need more offensive contribution from their back end, right? Like, obviously you're going to want better management of the puck. You're not going to want the turnovers in the middle of a rink like Orlov and McAvoy have had the last couple games. But can you find a way for them to be that second layer of attack, like make that outlet pass and join the rush? I think that's where you're gonna see the Bruins talent and or depth take over. Like, on the back end, McAvoy, Lindholm, Orlov, even Carlo at times. Like, there's an opportunity for them to add to the offensive piece in the next, hopefully, 3 to 5 games. Like, I think the broadcast said tonight, like, they just had been stifled all night. And in order for the Bruins to be successful, that second layer of attack is really important. And you just haven't seen that over the last 2 games.
No, and getting to the middle of the ice has been tough too. In the Panthers end, that's also not been ideal. You mentioned defensively some of the turnovers, Orlov, McAvoy, Lindholm. I don't think those guys will be coming out of the lineup, but feels like now might be a time for a shakeup somewhere. You got Matt Grzelcyk there. I said this after game 1 when the Bruins had a tough time getting out of their own zone at times. Like, Grzelcyk is a master of that. Obviously, the physicality game is not his thing, but there's a guy who can move the puck well, elude pressure. I think I would be shocked if Grzelcyk's not in the lineup for game 3. I know Forbort hasn't been terrible, but I still think that it feels like there's a route for Grzelcyk to come back into the lineup after game 2. What do you think?
I think that there's definitely a space for Grzelcyk to come back in the line. But obviously, plus minus, one of the leaders in the league. Like, zone exits, usually really good. Just who does he who does he come in for, right? Like when you look at Derek Forward, that's someone that eats so many minutes on the penalty kill, someone that can match the physicality with the Panthers. So that would be the natural fit, right? Like people would think that Forward would come out and Matt Grzelcyk comes in. I'm just not so sure that's the case, especially if your thought process is that you're going to be more physical. So physical Forward's more physical than Grzelcyk, and then if you get into that type of game, right, like there's going to be more penalties. And so, are you going to take out a guy that is so integral to that PK? I don't know. I would think maybe Orlov's the one that comes out, and Grzelcyk goes in. But again, I don't see them taking out Orlov either.
That's the thing is we've talked about this a lot this year. Like they have, it's almost a good problem to have in that you have 7 defensemen who deserve to play every night. And even Clifton, like Clifton obviously is a right shot, so it's different, but Clifton adds that physical element to the team that, you know, could be missing. So I say Forbert, but again, you mentioned the penalty kill. That's such a huge part. And we talked about this on Poke the Bear the other day. Like Forbert on the penalty kill frees up guys like Lindholm and Orlov to play more 5-on-5 minutes and be fresher for that. So like you have a lot of things here that have to go, but you do kind of need that ability to move the puck out that Grzelcyk provides, I feel like.
I think the one, and it'd be interesting, right? Like obviously coaches are really particular about left-right matchups, right? Like Forbert playing with Clifton. I think the one that, for me, right, like if you were to take them out, it's probably Clifton at this point, right? Like you take a look at Stahl's goal, and as they turn the puck over in the neutral zone, you can almost see him kind of standing still. Like if he gaps up, he kills that play at the blue line, and it's been a part of his game that I've noticed in game 1 and game 2, where he's such a good skater. Like he is a physical presence, but it's almost like he doesn't trust his feet at times to kill plays. Like again, if he gets up with this gap, he can kill that kind of twice, either at the blue line on entry or when Stahl gets a puck. So I just don't know that they would go away from that left-right matchup with Forbort and Clifton. But for me, Clifton would probably be the one that comes out for Grzelcyk. And obviously, like Clifton's a really good player, and like you say, that's a great problem to have. But probably an opportunity for Grzelcyk to get in the lineup.
Yeah, it feels like Grzelcyk probably needs to enter back in. Would you change anything to the forwards? I mean, I know if Bergeron comes back, you have to move a guy out. Who are you moving out, by the way? Let's play this game. If Bergeron comes back in, let's play this game. This is fun. We like this stuff. If Bergeron comes back in,
I do.
Because we discussed this after game 1. If Bergeron comes back in for game 2, who slots out? Felt like it was either Frederic or Foligno. Frederic off the third line, Foligno off the fourth. Who do you think? I mean, if Bergeron comes back in, who comes out?
Yeah, that's really tough, right? Like Frederic has provided you some toughness. He's also scored 16, 17 goals this year. You'd be hard pressed to move him out, but you can't take Nosek out because he's so good in the face-off circle and on the PK. So you're then looking at Foligno or Hathaway. That is a tough one, Evan. Are you putting me on the spot and making me make a decision?
Well, you can make it. You can say whatever you'd like. I think again, my whole thing is I think Hathaway provides an element that the other two don't. I think he's just so annoying to play against. You went out and got him at the deadline. To me, he's not a guy that you're taking out of the lineup. Foligno is the interesting one because I think they want to give him time to get the rust off. And he, is an integral part, a veteran leader, all of that. And I like what he brings. I just think that it's kind of goes back to the defensive thing of it's a good problem to have in the sense that you have a lot of pieces there that deserve to play, but not everybody can. And it's funny, Frederic had some chances in game 1 that Lions stoned him on.
Yep.
So that's another tough one. After game 1, I was like, oh, Frederic could probably go, but Frederic does provide something there. So does Foligno. So, I mean, I don't have a definitive answer either. I got to sleep on that a little bit, but I mean, it's an interesting debate.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to ask me, I think you probably keep Frederic in the lineup just because of the offensive chances that he's created. He can play with the same physicality. Obviously, you want that leadership in, but if Bergeron's coming back, you have that leadership there. That whole team really has played in a lot of playoff games. Krejci, Bergeron, Marchand. So I'm gonna stick with Frederick. Let him play, and if he doesn't play well enough, then you can go back to Foligno in whatever game 4 scenario
Yeah,
might happen if Bergeron's back in the
my
lineup.
only counter to that is that I think Frederick's role would be a lot different on the fourth line, it feels like, than being up on the third line. So I don't know if that offensive ability would show as much just because of how that fourth line's deployed. So that would be my only thing with that, is that I think that if you took out Frederick, or if you took out Foligno, excuse me, and you put Frederick down on that fourth line, I don't I don't know if it's as good a fit, but he can provide that. Like, he can bring that physicality and things like that. But yeah, I mean, it's
so then my counter to you, Evan, thinking as right, like as a coach in worst case scenario, right? Like obviously we've seen through the playoffs, right? Like you look at Tampa's series last night, or even Dallas with Pavelski now. If someone on your top 6 goes out, who's more likely to kind of slot in and move up? Like Frederick can provide you offense in that top 9 that I don't think Foligno can at this point. And I completely agree with you. Foligno probably a better fit on that fourth line the way they're used. But if you have an injury in your top 9, I think Frederick gives you a little bit of what Foligno can give you on that fourth line. But if something happens in your top line, especially if Bergeron's not completely healthy, then you can move him up and still have a little bit of offense provided there.
It's an interesting point, and I think you have a point there, because he can provide that. I know Foligno was it's funny, when Foligno was first signed 2 summers ago, one of Sweeney's things was, hey, he could potentially slot in as a top 6 center. It's really never happened. Last year, obviously, was riddled with injuries. This year, I don't think there's really been any times that Foligno's been up there. So yeah, I mean, and they also think Frederick has the ceiling to be a top 6, or a top 6 scoring wing or center potentially. I don't know if I see that. Frederick's always been an interesting case there. I really haven't seen that potential, but they could be right. I could be wrong. It happens.
Yeah, no, I think they're pretty happy with Frederick being a bottom 6 guy, right? Like that.
Oh yeah.
Can do a little bit of everything, and right, like I think he's probably close to what his ceiling is right now with the 16 goals. Like that is a lot of goals for him. And if you had asked Bruins fans, 3 years ago, if that was what Trent Frederick was capable of, you're probably saying no, right? Like, so Frederick had a great year, deserves to be in the lineup, and can provide you both a little bit of offense and some physicality, and obviously, right, like you see at the end of the games.
Yeah.
And right, like Foligno's willing to do it too, right? Like willing to drop the gloves, stand up for his teammates.
Absolutely. So let's get into the goaltending. I know that people have been commenting that, and I know people are going to be there's going to be lots of takes about the goaltending for the Bruins over the next day and a half, 2 days. I don't think you switch from Ullmark. I don't. I think that those really weren't his fault. At least, most of them. I can't, off the top of my head, I don't think there was one that was completely his fault. And, again, you have Swayman there. It's a great backup option. But once you start switching them, it gets into dangerous territory. You're a coach. You're a coach right now. Great team, St. Mark's. What do you think about this? Who do you stick with Swayman? Do you stick with Ullmark, or you move to Swayman?
Yeah, first I would say St. Mark's and Boston Bruins probably not on the same level.
No, they're the same. I think they're the same. You're selling yourself short here.
I don't. Yeah, ISL Eberhardt in NHL, exact same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah. I mean, Ullmark's probably going to win the Vezina. I think tonight wasn't his best night. I think if you asked him, he'd probably want back Montour's first at the beginning of the third.
Yes. Yep.
And he probably would want to play Verhaeghe's fourth goal, right? Like that windmill is really difficult to make saves in. So he'd probably want to play that a little bit differently. But when you're getting, right, like you take a look, I don't remember if it was the second or third period, Montour had an unobstructed one-time slap shot from the hash marks.
Yes.
So as a goalie, you are just trying to survive out there when you're consistently taking shots from uh, like high danger areas. I mean, there's nothing he can do at that point, right? Like, so some of that has got to get in your head a little bit. Like, so I'm not, I wouldn't put the blame on Ullmark tonight, and I'm going right back to him with no qualms. Like, obviously, is Jeremy Swayman a great goalie? Yes, he is. Is he a starting goalie in the National Hockey League? Yes, he is. Are you lucky that you have that depth? Yes, but Ullmark's has been the better goalie all year, and that's who I'm going with.
Yeah. Also, Swayman has not been great against Florida this year. And
Okay.
I also just don't. I just, as you said, he's the Olmark's Vezina, like most likely the Vezina winner. You don't move away from that. There's no reason to. And as I said, and this has been something we've kind of talked about a little bit when there was that discussion a few weeks ago as the season was ending of, hey, do they still, go back and forth in net? Do they do the tandem? It gets, and this as a coach, it gets to be kind of weird. Confidence is a big thing in the playoffs. And if you're taking Ullmark out, putting Swayman in, you don't want to diminish Ullmark's confidence. That confidence is already so high from such a good season. So I know there's going to be a lot of takes over the next couple days. We're here to be rational with this. Doesn't feel like this is a need for Swayman. Now, again, this is hypothetical. If Ullmark goes out in game 3 and has a really bad game, then you may have to reconsider that. But that hasn't happened. That's probably most likely not going to happen. So again, I don't feel the need to move on from Linus Ullmark. I think that you're fine there.
Yeah, I think in playoff times, you're going with your best players, and Ullmark has been your best, if not right, like outside of Pasternak, has probably been your best player all year, and you win game 1 in large part because the first 2 periods Linus Ullmark is lights out, right? Like, so you turn the puck over 15 times and you're asked to make high leverage saves. Like, you're not gonna get that every night, and you didn't tonight. But like, if the Bruins come out and play a clean game and he lets up 4 on 16 shots, then okay, you'll talk about going with Jeremy Swayman, but certainly not right now.
No, I don't think it's time to hit the panic button on the goaltending. I think there are much bigger issues throughout the lineup that have nothing to do with Linus Ullmark. It's an interesting thing, and the goalie tandem's a thing that was debated a lot, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. I know you mentioned, and I know I mentioned confidence and things like that, but is there any way, like, they're not going to, I don't think. And as we said, we both want them to stick with Ullmark, but would there be a way they could make a tandem work? Because I like Fluto Shinzawa, the Athletic wrote yesterday of the case for Swayman to go in for game 2. Like, is there a way that a tandem could even work in the playoffs successfully?
I don't think that a tandem works during the playoffs. I truly don't. Right, like obviously the Bruins, they are a team that has been through a lot of different series, and they are a veteran group that have great leadership. Like I said, I think going with a tandem kind of sends, and obviously they have a ton of respect for Jeremy Swayman and confidence in his game. I just think it would be really difficult and the wrong message to say that in a playoff series that you're going to switch back and forth and hope that when either one goes back in that they have complete confidence in their own game. Like, I know that I didn't articulate that well enough. I just don't see. I don't know of a team that's won a Stanley Cup and has gone with some sort of tandem. Like, I know that it's happened for injuries, right? Like, you look at Pittsburgh, Matt Murray and Fleury, even at times, right? Like with Vegas with Fleury and Lehner, but I think it would be really difficult to do.
It's difficult. It's not conventional either. Again, you're the best team in the league. You have the Vezina winner. Why would you switch from that? That really comes down to that. So that's really the crux of it.
Yeah, and I think you set up everything for this moment, right? Like, you did the split, essentially the even split during the year, so that you got into what could potentially be a 28-game playoff run, so that Ullmark could be healthy enough to make that go. I don't think that you're going to go into a split right now. I just don't see it. I
Yeah.
know I see someone say it's Swayman time, but I really don't think so.
No, I don't think it is either. I think we're very much in agreement on that. They head back to Florida. I know obviously the Panthers get a bad rep for a bad environment at their arena, which makes sense. I know there's a Panthers fan in there wreaking havoc in the chat. It's hysterical. He's just causing that much. He's like Matthew Kachuk in the chat, getting people going. But are you worried at all about them going? I know we discussed this a little bit at the top of the show, but are you worried a little bit that series is 1-1, they're heading back to Florida? Like, that's not ideal in that sense. I mean, I had them at the beginning of the series, Florida winning a game in Florida. So if that holds up, it's a 2-2 series, and then it's a best of 3. I mean, what do you see going into Florida?
Yeah, I'm a little nervous for a couple of reasons. I think two, the Panthers have ultimate confidence that they can compete with the Bruins. I mean, they've shown that over the last 2 games. And I think Bruins fans are in agreement. Like, Florida has been the better team for 2 games. Right? So they're going back to their home rink, believing that they can beat the Bruins in any game. I think the second thing that concerns me is, right, and you touched on it, there aren't going to be a ton of fans. The environment in Sunrise, Florida, isn't exactly TD Bank Garden, right? So you've got to bring the energy level to that game, and the Bruins just haven't shown in the first 2 games that they've been capable of doing that on their home rink. They are a veteran group. They have been through it, but those 2 things scare me a little bit. Yes, am I concerned? Yes. Can the Panthers win this series? Yes, they can.
Yeah, I still think there's adjustments to be made on the Bruins side. What do you? I mean, we've talked about this. We've talked stylistically a lot in this episode of different things the Panthers have done right, and obviously limiting turnovers is an obvious one for the Bruins. But how do the Bruins counter what the Panthers have thrown at them? What are they gonna have to do in these final 5 games? I hope if they have to go all 5 games.
Yeah, no. So I think a little bit like we talked about before, like you said, right? Like the neutral zone has been stifling for Florida. They've been daring you to turn the puck over, and in that instance, it's not too much different from what the Bruins did against. And this is going a ways back, and you might not even be old enough for this, but Tampa in the 2011 conference.
I am
finals,
old.
right?
I think I was in 6th grade for that. I remembered vividly. So I was watching that very much. Yes.
Yeah. Thanks for making me feel old. I turned 40. I turned 44 on Friday. So, but right, like Tampa Bay at that time, they played a 1-3-1, and if you remember, Nathan Horton's goal, the one that made it 1-0, you come back, you support, and you kind of break that trap. I think for the trap here, it's probably a little bit different. You're going to have to gain red and put it in deep. So what might that look like? It might have to be D to D and stretch, right? Like that. So that means stretching your strong side winger to the far blue line, which you saw at times, and it's usually Pasternak that does it. He'll stretch it. You're throwing up a pass, you're chipping it in, and like you've then got a full hard probably with 2 other guys flooding one area of the rink. But they're literally saying to you, you can't beat us. We know you won't put it in forecheck. And unfortunately, that's probably what the Bruins are going to have to do. Like, I can only imagine at home, and the Panthers with last change, they're going to get all the matchups they want. So the Bruins are definitely going to have to make some adjustments. They can't go into that game and just say, okay, if we're crisper with passes, if we limit our turnovers, that we're going to create offensive chances. They're going to have to put it behind them and want to forecheck in the next 2 games at least.
It's, and you mentioned, I can't believe we were 38 minutes. We've yet to mention the last change in Florida, because it is. I mean, the Bruins, that's a huge thing in these series is those line matchups, how you match up, each line against each line. And now Florida has the upper hand in that. And I'm curious to see the odds when they come out for games 3 and 4, the betting odds, because, as you said, Florida now believes that they can do this. And I remember, I think it was before game one, Matthew Tkachuk said that they're going to have to be almost perfect to beat the Bruins once. And that they've done it. They've beat the Bruins once. And so I think that belief is there, and it's, a whole new series in that sense. I still think the Bruins win this series. I do. I will not go off of that. I'm going to stick with my take. Do you think they're going to lose this series, or just more like be cautious a little, Evan? Come on.
No, I think at the beginning of the series, I said Bruins in 5, right? Like kind of the thought process that Florida is a heavy group, but that they would take one from the Bruins. My thought process was much along the same as yours. That it would be in Florida. I think that game 3 is huge. I don't want to see it get to game 7. That's what I want to tell you. Okay. And the reason why is you've had a record breaking year. All the pressure is on you at home in game 7. So I think that game 3 is the most important game in the series. And not just because it's the next one, but if Florida is somehow able to come away with that game, that gives them belief that they can win that series. And right, like it'd be really difficult for the Bruins to rattle off 3 straight games after being outplayed for 3 in a row. And I think if it gets to game 7, I don't like the Bruins' chances in a game 7 where you have the weight of, winning the most games in NHL history, having the most points, having this record-breaking year, and then playing at home underneath a crowd that was hard on them tonight, right? Like, Boo Bird's out for a couple power plays, and certainly in the third period, that would concern me.
Oh, a game.
So
what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I say Bruins win game 3, they find a way, and they win in 6.
That's a fair prediction. It's funny, the Bruins minus 260 to win the series still on FanDuel, plus 270 to win the cup still. So they're still in the driver's seat, according to our good friends over at FanDuel. But I just have a tough time imagine a game. Imagine because the pressure's been on them this whole series. I said this before game 1. There's no pressure on the Panthers in the series. They're facing the best regular season team of all time. They are not supposed to win this series. And here they are. Like the fact that they're even challenging them, I think is an accomplishment at that. And I know they were the President's Trophy team last year, but I still think this Panthers team is very different from the one last year. In net for the Panthers, I know we discussed the Bruins. After game 1, I said you got to move on from Lyon. You got to go to Bobrovsky. Some of those goals were shaky. Grady got you here, but I think, Bobrovsky's shown in the past, had a horrible year this year, but I think in the past, he's won playoff series that he shouldn't have. Obviously, the big one being with the Blue Jackets over the Lightning in 2019. It's familiar to this series. At least the Bruins won't get swept like the Lightning in 2019. But sticking with Lyon was actually a pretty good decision because he played pretty damn well in game 2. I mean, do you think that he has do you think he has capabilities to carry them at times through this series?
I think that's going to be the one X factor, right? Like, I thought that they were most certainly going to go away from him in game 2, and I give Maurice a ton of credit for staying with him because he played a really good game tonight. I think it had to be really – and I thought after game 1, I thought the series was over, and this is why. I thought that the Panthers played the perfect game. I thought that they were heavy. They created turnovers. They made
the exact same thing.
The Bruins defended, and you got bad goaltending. So I thought, like, they must have been frustrated. You threw everything at them, and you still lost 3-1. I was convinced that they were going to go with Bobrovsky. Obviously, I don't follow them quite as obviously at all or as much as I follow the Bruins. But I thought you have someone that is a veteran that's won series. I thought that they were going to go back to him tonight. That's still the one thing that I would point at. You have a distinct advantage in net, and I do think that that's going to come up and play a part in the Bruins winning the series. Like,
yeah.
He was good tonight, but he was equally as bad on Monday.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. That was my viewpoint after game 1. I said, as you said, it was kind of like, remember that Hurricanes-Bruins series in 2019 in the conference final when the Bruins were up 3-0? Bruins went to Carolina. They were in game 4. Hurricanes threw everything at Rask and the Bruins in the first period. no goals. Bruins score kind of a crappy one. It was either in like the second or the third, and that was, or it might have been game 3, and it was it, you know. And game 1, I thought that was sort of indicative of, oh, the Panthers did everything right. They played the way they wanted to play, and they still lost. That was kind of the MO about the Bruins the whole year. And I mean, again, credit to the Panthers. I mean, the fact that they came out, played the way they did in game 2, pretty incredible. And I think, you know, there's gonna be a lot of overreactions over the next couple days. But as you said, I mean, you hit it at the beginning of the beginning of this show. Like, the Panthers have played better through 2 games than the Bruins, and I think that's a fact. I don't think that's like even a take, right? Like, that's pretty factual.
No, I think they were heavier in game 1. They've made more adjustments. They've forced the Bruins into bad turnovers. They've played the perfect for what their talent level allows. And then, rather, it shows the importance of one player. You get one player back in Sam Bennett, who is a 200-foot physical player that you need to compete against the Boston Bruins. I just think you get on that plane tonight as a Florida Panther, and you are excited. You have a ton of confidence, and you win the series.
Heck of a game 2. Carl, this has been fun. I'm glad we get to do this. I'm glad you were able to join. This was incredibly insightful. I'm sure the people loved to hear such good hockey talk. A real good breakdown of these first 2 games. So, what a pleasure to have you on.
I'm sure that fans love people talking about stretching and forechecks and stuff like that, right? They didn't want.
They do. I think.
Yeah.
The bad takes of me and Connor sometimes, yes, but I think they loved having you on, and it was great to have you on. 2 Framingham guys talking Bruins after this game too. So yeah, that was game 2. Bruins lose. Not time to overreact, but certainly adjustments must be made. There will be a Poke the Bear podcast out, I believe, Friday. So you get to have that before game 3. And that is this postgame show. I'm Evan Marinofsky. That's Carl Corazzini. You Bruins fans, have a great rest of your night.